Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, I am really excited to have Natasha Siegel with me for this, I think, very pragmatic topic around getting unstuck. She is a high performance coach, leadership strategist, and founder of the Cure for Career Limbo, which is a program that helps ambitious professionals break free from career limbo and build fulfilling, purpose-driven careers and businesses. After she left the corporate world, she created her own path and discovered powerful frameworks that help both individuals and organizations unlock their full potential. She's worked with high achievers, from executives to entrepreneurs, guiding them through transitions, career and life transitions, identity shifts, and leadership growth. And when she's not coaching or speaking, you can find her leading community events, coaching her daughter's sports teams, and generally empowering professionals to design careers and lives that they love. And I'm happy to have her here. She is somebody that I know personally. In full transparency, she and I have been, I would say, working together or side by side over the past year. I consider her my coworker, and she has just inspired me by everything that she has done to build her business. And so I absolutely wanted her on. And I think you guys are going to, and ladies are going to enjoy the conversation. So Natasha, welcome.
Thank you so much, Karen. I'm honored to be here. And, just as you're saying about me, just being able to work with you over the last year has been so amazing. And I've just loved watching you create what you're creating. So thank you so much for letting me be here.
Sure. So, of course, the feeling is mutual. So tell me, why did you want to participate in the Women Leading Boldly Summit? What was it about the topic that you were so passionate about?
Yeah, I always worked in male dominated industries. Right after college, I started out in IT, and right after that, I did that for a few years, and shortly after, I started working in medical devices. And today the mix in both of those areas is much better in terms of gender. But when I started in them, I was like one of very few women in my role. And, I was the first person in my organization to go on maternity leave. That was something we had to kind of figure out. And, I don't know what it was, but I just never really thought of myself as different than the men. And it wasn't until, sure, there were times where, you recognize that there are some differences. Like, I couldn't ask the surgeon that I worked with to go hang out in my apartment and watch football like the male counterpart that I had. But I always thought of it as a positive thing. For me, being a female in this male dominated world was a way to stand out. And I was just able to communicate so much differently with our customers that my male counterparts, quite frankly, just really couldn't. And it wasn't until I joined the company's women's network that I realized that's not the norm. There were so many women that I thought were incredible, and they didn't. They didn't see their own great. And it pained me. And I just wanted so badly to help. So when you say women leading boldly, I'm like, sign me up. Sounds like such a great opportunity to help women.
So thank you for that. It's always so interesting to hear everybody's background stories, because I think we're all here because of how we've evolved in the world and how we evolved in our careers. So always extremely interesting. So thank you for that. Mm-hmm. And today we're going to talk about getting unstuck. And I love just generally the theme of getting unstuck, because I think everybody at some point in time is stuck, whether that be professionally, personally, men, women. I think that it's just something that exists. So why don't we just start off and just give us some insight into generally the reasons why people are stuck. And maybe you could also identify what stuck means for you.
Yeah. I think I hear this all the time. People just saying stuck, I'm just kind of in limbo. That's why, the program is called the Cure for Career Limbo. People they don't know what they want. They say they don't know what they want, or they feel like they want to do more, but they don't know what, they don't know how to get it, or like they just feel very stuck. It feels like a big decision, and they just don't know what to do. And the only word that they can come up with is stuck, right? So I think the reasons really, I think there's three main reasons why people are stuck. One, it feels easier to them. It just feels easier to say, I don't know, in anything really. But in this case, if you say, I don't know, you don't have to go to work answering what you're going to do next. And that does take a lot of mental energy. So, I think people just feel like it seems easier in the moment to just, you go back and forth in your mind, oh, what do I want to do? And then you just push it away again because it feels too big, too heavy to make that decision. So it feels easier not to make a decision, right?
So you don't have to choose. That's because if what I'm hearing is correct, what you're saying is, I don't have to make a choice. I don't have to make a choice. I'm choosing to stay where I am.
That's what makes them feel stuck. Yes. They don't realize though that that's what they're choosing, right? Like I think, and they don't realize that it's actually harder to sit and stuck, It's like, it feels hard to do a diet, but really it's much harder to be every day disappointed with your physical appearance and state of health, right? But it feels so much harder every day to like pick the right thing to eat and to do the workout. So very, very similar kind of situation. And then another huge part of it is just fear of judgment and fear of the unknown. So when you are stuck, you don't have to worry about being judged for going for what you do want, right? If you're a mom, you're a mother, you want to move up in your career, maybe there's some fear of being judged for that, right? And on the other side, maybe you want to prioritize your family, but you spend so much time at work that you're afraid that you're going to be judged for doing that. And, and I think like people they allow themselves to even judge themselves on it because of the fear of being judged by other people, right? And just not knowing, right? The fear of the unknown, making assumptions of what the next thing is going to mean for you, for your life, for the logistics of your life, right? So many times I talk to clients and they're assuming that the higher paying job is going to automatically mean more time away from their family. But they don't actually fit with, what if I am just so great that I can create and negotiate whatever I want for my life, even in that role. And then the last thing is conflicting environments. Like it's proximity. And, if you're at home, you're with your spouse, your kids, your friends, just doing things socially. You're talking to other people who don't work as hard as you do. Maybe you're on vacation, you're seeing the world. And in those moments, you're like, why do I work so much? Every single person listening to this has been there, right? And then you get to work and you get into this meeting and there's this project and you feel like really lit up by something. And you're like, oh yeah, I want to do that. And you just get caught up in that. So you spend all this time at work, you come home, you go on the vacation. It's just this like, literally this like back and forth of where you spend your time. And when you're in it, you chameleon, right? Like you kind of start to feel like whatever is happening in that should be where you spend your time. Maybe not. Maybe you're at home and you're like, I want to work more. But still, I think just like where you end up spending your time doing that back and forth is what makes people also feel stuck, because it's hard to know what is.
So I actually want to tell a story, if I can, because this is my personal story about being stuck. And for those of you who watch this on YouTube, the way that Natasha just like mimicked being stuck was going like from left to right. And for me, it was like being on a fence, which means that one point in time, so I live in France, and so many women only work 4 days a week. And I didn't want to work 4 days a week. I loved working. I loved my job. But for a very long time, I was on the fence about, do I go to 4 days? Do I work 5 days? And there was so much almost shame in wanting to work 5 days. But in 4 days, I was resenting the fact that I wasn't at work. And so I felt stuck for so long on top of that fence, deciding. And I just have to say, the second that I decided that I wasn't going to stay home, that I wanted to go to work, I was going to work 5 days a week, and I was going to become, I was going to climb my way up the corporate ladder. It just freed up so much mental energy from asking yourself those questions constantly about what do I do, and so I think that, and I would love to hear also about how you get unstuck, but in my case, it was simply making a decision and having my own back. So would you agree with that? And
totally.
Is that
I was just
part
going to
of
ask
what needs to be done?
Yeah. I was just going to ask you, like, when, because, I don't know that you've ever shared that part of your story with me before, which is ironic because of what I do. But what do you think made you finally decide to just go the 5 days?
At some point in time, you just have to make a decision. I got so tired of all of the brain energy that was using up. And it was very heavy in terms of emotional burden because there was so much social pressure. And I think I just got tired of it.
Yeah.
And literally, I still remember what a weight was lifted off my shoulders the second I said, I'm going to work 5 days a week and I don't care what other people think.
Right. But before that, you were afraid of being judged for it.
Yeah, of course.
Such a huge part of it, especially for women. I think men have a much easier time, and I'm totally generalizing, and I know this, but I don't know. I think especially with work, right? Women have such a harder time just owning what they want for their careers, because as much as we say, like, modern day, we should be out of that, it's still drilled into us in a way, right? It's just, that's not how the way the world worked forever ago. And it's like, it's not like it just switched and now the men are staying home with the kids every day and the women are the breadwinners. It's like, no, we're both doing it. So, it's hard. And I was in my own career limbo, right? I was doing my job. I was in the role for several years, and I had people coming up to me and saying, oh, hey, Natasha, you must be ready for your next role. What are you thinking? What's next for you? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Should I be ready for my next role? Like, it didn't even occur to me until people started saying it. And I've heard this from other people, clients of mine too, or maybe they start to feel pressure because other people in their roles, especially people who started after them, they move up. You start to feel this pressure that right before that didn't even exist, right? So, I remember feeling like, oh, now I'm putting this unnecessary pressure on myself. I didn't realize it at the time, but I started forcing it, thinking, okay, I need to explore what's next for me. What's next for me? And I felt this pressure. And because it wasn't natural. It wasn't like someone came to me and said, hey, Natasha, I think you'd be really great for this role. What do you think? And now I'm like, oh, that sounds really interesting. Now I'm deciding, do I want this or do I not? It was like, I should be doing something different. I don't know what, right? Like, that was the part that was driving me crazy. And, I ended up pursuing a couple of different positions. And I really, by the time I got through the process, I was like, I don't actually want this. I do want what I'm doing right now, and I am totally comfortable with it. And I remember saying to the person, I think that my next role doesn't even exist yet. And ironically, I have like chills sometimes when I think about it. I didn't realize that I really was going to create my next role. I just decided to find the best ways to add a lot of value in my current role, right? How do people feel engaged in their roles? It's usually not from the amount of money that they make or the title that they have. It's from the fulfillment and the purpose of what they get to do every day. And so I was doing these great things and I wanted to do more. So I did. So I just started pursuing things that I felt passionate about. And it just so happened that the top leaders of my organization were restructuring the organization and I was very passionate about the topic. And I just got in it. I inserted myself. I felt like I can add value here. And I still felt very highly engaged, even though I still had the same title. I didn't need more money to do it, right? I just wanted to feel fulfilled, and I needed to decide for myself, like you did, actively, that was good for me. And I didn't need to answer to anybody else.
And so would you say that that is one of the ways to get unstuck is to create, and I almost want to say, which is kind of a theme of the discussions I've been having, take ownership for what you want.
Yes.
And don't expect it from your company or don't expect it from somebody else. Is that one solution that people could have to get unstuck, to unstuck themselves? I don't even know if that's English, but
absolutely. The only reason people feel stuck or they're afraid of the judgment is because they believe them. Right. So when people were saying to me, oh, you must be ready for your next role, I was like, oh, maybe they're right. If I didn't believe them, it wouldn't have even, I would have just been like, nope, I'm good. Right. But in that moment, I allowed myself to believe them. And sometimes that's a good thing. Like I say, my superpower is my open mind. And I think that has served me very well. But you have to check yourself sometimes. And to your point, for sure, I think the biggest thing, well, first, I will say the first step to getting unstuck is recognizing that being stuck is a choice. It is something that you're choosing. And it's so hard because we don't realize that. We tell ourselves stories all the time, right? We use our identities against us. For example, like I used to say, I have a terrible memory. And I know there are people listening to this right now that are thinking, yeah, me too. I'm bad with names or whatever, right? Like people who write everything down and then never go back and look at the notes and, just like give up when it comes time to recalling. And once I learned some of the skills through getting certified as a life coach, I applied it to my memory. And I was like, I realized that actually the reason why I have a bad memory is because I just keep saying I have a terrible memory. Instead, I started thinking like, but I can remember things. And I genuinely started like focusing on ways to remember better. And I promise you, I improved my memory just from the way I thought about it. But our identities, like the way we talk about ourselves, oh, I'm a night person, I'm not a morning person, like it's crazy. And we use these things for us and a lot of times against us. It's an explanation. Some people will call it an excuse. We think it's an explanation for why we are where we are. And so I think just recognizing that being stuck is a choice, and you can go through actually a quite simple process to get unstuck, right? So knowing it's a choice, and then you have to start thinking about what you want. I have something. So if you're like driving and listening to this and can't write stuff down, like I have a one pager for everybody that you'll have access to, but you can write down what you want through the lens of, what if no one was judging me? Like just no one can judge you. What do you want? And give equal airspace to multiple sides. So what do you want in your career? What do you want for you? What do you want for your life, for your family, for your social life, your physical health, all these things? Like, what do you want? And then once you've written it down write it down, right? That's important. Then you answer, why do I want it? And you talked about this in your example, and you've talked about it. I heard it in your podcast, which is fantastic, by the way. I think, why do I want it? And then you find the one that you feel the most, that you like your reasons the most. Like that's where you're going to have the easiest time moving forward. Because when you have your back on the decision that you're making, that's when you step into self-leadership, right? That's when you feel like, that's when you can own it and you can have your back on it. Like that's just so much easier. So, why do you want the next, if what you want is a new role, why do you want it? Is it money? Is it title? Is it for impact? Right? Like none of it is right or wrong. If it's money, that's fine. As long as you like your reasons for it, right? That's what matters. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. If they're like, oh, she's just chasing, the title or the job or the money. If you have good reasons for it that you like, that's all that matters. But if you haven't even given thought to like why you want the next thing, that's why you're holding yourself back.
And do you ever have people, or does this help, to say what they don't want?
Yes,
Does
totally.
that help? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, totally. I think that's a great addition to it. Because sometimes it's easier, right? When people are talking about, what do you want for dinner? Oh, you want Chinese? Nah, I don't want Chinese. Good. It's off the table. We're not considering it anymore, right? Done. It is very impactful, I think, to decide what you don't want, to know what you don't want.
Mm.
Maybe you start with that, right? I think that's a great point. Yeah.
Okay. So how to get unstuck? Can you summarize the key points again?
Yes.
Just so, because we also went back and forth a little bit on it.
Sure.
Just to
Yeah.
summarize them.
So first is recognizing that being stuck is a choice. You don't have to stay stuck. You can get unstuck. And the way to do that is genuinely take out a piece of paper and a pen. Maybe you can type it on your phone or on the computer. Fine. But write it down. What don't you want? I think that's a great thing to start with. And what do you want? Giving some time to all the areas of your life. Then once those are down, you go back and say, why do I want these things? Okay. And look at the areas where you really love your reasons for it. That and the last part, is just acknowledging one of the options is just being right where you are. I say this, how, a lot of women, if you're listening to this, you're probably an achiever. Achievers have been told for the last however many years, this is like a common theme. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? So we're taught this and we're like, what does that mean? And we try to figure out like, what does being uncomfortable mean? And then there's examples, and then you just step out of your comfort zone. Maybe you just leaving an organization is out of your comfort zone, moving into a new role, stepping into leadership when you've never managed people. Those are all things that's what they mean when they say get comfortable being uncomfortable. But what also happens to achievers is that as soon as they're comfortable again, they feel uncomfortable. Like, we are uncomfortable being comfortable. And actually, there's nothing wrong with that, right? My husband just went through this. He's thinking like, oh, what do I want to do? And I'm like, why do you keep coming back to this? You're good. He's like, I'm happy. I feel like I shouldn't be. Things are too good. But maybe right where you are is perfect. Give that.
And do you have an example from also clients that you've worked with, also of the process that they went through and maybe some of the questions and how they worked through that?
Yes. Yeah.
Give us an example.
Sure. So I have a client who she saw one of my Instagram posts and she wrote to me and she said, so are you telling me it's me and not them? And I was like, what do you mean? And she was interviewing for a job. She had a little resentment about, just the way things have changed in her company and maybe the lack of recognition she's gotten. I helped her prepare for an interview. And just in that conversation of preparing for the interview, it was like, well, what are you good at? What are you really great at? And what do you enjoy doing? Just knowing those two things and stepping into that confidence of, what am I really good at? From a like humble confidence place. This is not arrogance. This is just you knowing what you're great at, what you enjoy doing. And the combination of the two is the key. Like, that's what you should be doing. And so if you take that with you into a job interview, you don't have to worry about memorizing, answers that you've already pre-written out to questions you think they might ask you. No, it's like, just show up as yourself. And it sounds so annoying to hear when people say it. I've heard it too. And it's like, yeah, but the only reason it's a stressful thing is if you think that yourself is not good enough. And so for her, she was thinking, I could never be, in this, like this director level. And she was probably 2 levels below that at the time. And just after a few months of working together, she got promoted to, a leadership position. one step below the director. And she's like, oh my gosh, like I think I could actually become a director. And really, truly, the only thing that changed was she just started believing in herself. And instead of thinking about, I remember her saying, oh, I have to present to, the CFO and, these top leaders in the company. And what if they tear it apart? What if they tear my presentation apart? And I said, but what if you're afraid that they're going to tear it apart because you think that means that it's bad. But what if you went into that meeting thinking, I hope they tear this apart. I hope I'm going to learn so much from them. And she was like, oh my God, it's like such a, I love it's such an image of the weight lifted off your shoulders. And she just started owning the things that she believed in and moving forward in her company. And because she felt stuck, she's like, I feel like I want more, but I don't think I can be that. So I just helped her realize she could be, and it's not going to go from here to there instantly, but let's just start with these day-to-day, like, how can you own what you're good at and what you believe to be impactful for each meeting and conversation, right? It was just so cool to watch her. Now she's like, I think I could be a director.
Yeah.
And her director's leaving, and it's like a potential opportunity for her now. And she's thinking like, I could do this. And it's only been maybe 5 or 6 months. So she felt in limbo because she's like, I want more, but I don't actually think I can. But all she needed to do is just start believing in little pieces of herself and functioning off of those. You don't have to look at the director title and say, I don't think I can do all of that. It's like, but what are you good at now? And just do those. Always own those.
Okay. So also when it comes to getting unstuck, because I think it's just everybody goes through it. I think everybody listening to this conversation has been there at some point in time.
Totally.
I find that you don't know if you can move forward if you're not moving forward.
Yes.
So what I mean by that is I find that you have to take some kind of action to know also if that is the right thing for you or not. Because you'll never know unless you try something. And
Yes.
I don't see like the solutions to getting unstuck. There's everything that you just said, and the belief work and the identity work, hugely important. At some point in time, you have to make a decision.
Yes.
You have to choose. You have to, because I personally think the biggest issue, and to come back to what I was saying earlier, it's just the brain energy it uses up and what you tell yourself daily, that my situation sucks, that I can't do anything else, that I'm going to be in this job forever. There is always a choice.
Totally.
Always. And when people realize that is so liberating, I think, to realize that they have a choice.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And that's funny because that's actually the advice. I don't know how I didn't put it in my list here, but that's the advice I gave my husband, was like, maybe you just need to try something. Because once you try something, you'll have a better idea of if that fits for you or not. Just imagining it, right? People think it's the end of the world if they move into a new position. They think that's like, they know logically that it doesn't have to be permanent, but they imagine themselves stuck again, which is so miserable because they were just in it, that they're afraid to put themselves back in it. But actually, they're just still in it, right? So now you're not even growing, right? What if your goal was just to like be on this journey of like constant self, evolution, right? Like just always wanting to learn more and be better. And you're not going to learn unless you do different things. You're just not.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, totally. It's such a great point. Just taking some action. And you can even decide, maybe you're having a hard time with that list and you're having a really hard time feeling like, I really love all my reasons for this thing. So if that's the case, then just picking something and then like owning that the reason why you're picking something is because you're just trying to get unstuck, right? Is fine enough. That's going to be just as impactful for you, because once you take a couple of steps, you're going to see what works and doesn't work for you.
And the other thing I would just like to add to the discussion is I find, and this was my case a couple times, I took action because I was stuck, and I think I took action for the wrong reasons. Like, I don't want to say it was an easy way out, but it was kind of an easy solution to why I was stuck. And it ended up being a really just, it didn't suit me, the decisions that I made. But don't beat myself up. Don't stay stuck there. If it doesn't work out, you always have a choice to change again. And I think that that's having that ability just to be honest with yourself about what you want is such an important life skill.
Well, and also, right, and this is another cliche statement that people throw around, but it is so true. Like, either you win or you learn something, right? So for you, maybe you're like, that didn't fit me, but how great is it that you got to do what you were doing, learn that that's not what you want, cut that out of the decision process, and you learned things along that way. 100%. There was plenty that you learned, and you can choose. I'm saying you like, but everybody listening, right? You can choose if what you did was a mistake, or if you're just going to say, this is just part of my journey. This is part of the process. And maybe some people believe, oh, it was necessary in order for me to get to the next step, right? And it's hard when you're in the moment, but you always know it's gonna go through. Like, you're gonna get through it, and what you take from it is completely up to you. And hopefully you are somebody who chooses to take some lessons learned from it and make it something that was just part of your journey, and actually an impactful part of your journey.
Definitely. And that's a story for another time.
Yes. Yeah.
So, okay, this is great. Such an important topic. Tell us, if somebody wanted to work with you, where could they find you? And also, we'll link all of your information, of course, in the show notes. But if somebody wants to contact you, where can they find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn. You'll have the link from Karen. My Instagram handle's talkswith.tash. And you'll also have a link for a one-pager that kind of breaks down this process. Full disclosure, I might be editing it to make sure I add in, what we've talked about today, but that'll be a link as well. So thank you so much for having me, Karen.
Thank you. Is there anything else that you want to add that I either didn't ask, or something that's, on your chest and burning that you'd like to say?
No, I think I just want to share, whatever you think you can't do, just give, like, just for a moment, pretend like you're somebody else looking at yourself and saying, you're lying. Like, this is not true. And maybe, what if it is possible for you? Just all you really need is some belief and a little bit of action to go along with it. So anything's possible. I just believe that. I heard it all my life, right? Like, you can be anything you want. And I'm just like, yeah. But really, truly, you can be and do anything you want. Totally up to you.
So I love that. We will conclude with it. What if it's possible with a little bit of belief? Those two things together, I think, are so powerful. So thank you, Natasha, as always.
Thank you so much.
Such a wonderful conversation. And yes, thank you, everyone, for tuning in today.